Thank you for joining us and welcome to this evening's program. I'm Brian Davis, the Associate Director of Lifelong Learning in the Office of Alumni Relations at Johns Hopkins University. Before we begin, let me introduce our speakers for this evening. Dr. Jacqueline Jaky Banks hails from a rural village called Allen, located in Lower Eastern Shore, Maryland. Dr. Banks is an advocate, avid reader, and author with published romance stories, articles, and books. Over the years, she has worked in many roles to include college professor, advanced certified teacher, consultant, program director, and writer. Dr. Jaky has enjoyed a professional career that includes being a state-level political appointee. Her books and writing all serve as tools to bring awareness, improve lives, spark dialogue, and bring change. Dr. Jaky has over 45 years of civil rights activism. She is a graduate of the Salisbury University, Johns Hopkins University, and Drexel University. Joining us tonight is Kendra Banks, a resident of Baltimore City. She is currently the president of Royalty is Black, a lifelong artist, community activist spanning over 20 years. She's a proud member of Lambda Kappa Mu sorority and has a BS in communications from the Morgan State University. Kendra uses her background as a mechanism to raise the self-esteem of Black girls by offering them representation in Black fantasy stories and situations. Kendra received 2 music video awards for her artistry. She has appeared on HBO's The Wire, the movie Step Up, and performing at the Apollo Theater in New York. Now, would you join me in welcoming Dr. Jaky Banks and Kendra Banks?
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Jaky B. and
I am Kendra Banks. And as the president of Royalty is Black, I want to introduce my mother, the special consultant that said she would never be my employee. When our powers combined, we have created the Black Mermaid Initiative. And there's many, many things that we're excited to tell you about with this initiative. And we're going to start out the initiative with our mission, and we made a video. Okay, so walking up, we have literally prepared for this almost like a year in advance, right? As soon as we saw those Black girls get so excited about the Little Mermaid.
And that she looked like them. And she said, she looks like me.
Yes.
And we have been enthralled ever since with the reaction to see the impact of these little girls' self-esteem, that seeing themselves on the screen, brought even just seeing the trailer. So hence, the Black Mermaids is all about building the self-esteem of these girls.
Yeah, so once again, stay tuned.
What the video talks about is how we came to employ this mission, to want to use this mission, and watching how Black girls responded to the trailer from the movie, The Little Mermaid, and when they saw themselves on screen was absolutely amazing. So that sparked an interest in us, and hence from Kendra, and she said, the Black Mermaid League. And so here we are today, challenged and dedicated to building the self-esteem of Black girls.
Yes, so of course, today we're here for the release of our first children's book, The Black Mermaid, Topaz's first integration. And it really is a story of survival and change about my mother and her time going from segregation to integration in the 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah, I went to, so it is a book of survival. My first 4 years of public school were in an all Black environment from top to bottom. Then we integrated. So we're going to talk about that today. And it is a story of survival. And along with the book, Topaz's first integration, Kendra's also released a song.
Yes, so the song is called Flow Those ABCs. And I'm so excited because it was produced by Mighty Mark. And he brought home a Grammy for us this year, working with Chloe Bailey on her hit song, Have Mercy. So I'm going to have a QR code at the end, and I'm so excited for you to hear that as well. And the song actually premiered at the inaugural CIAA Black Mermaid Cheer Clinic. Royalty is Black partnered with Under Armour, the Ravens cheerleaders, and Bowie State University to teach 40 girls some dance moves, some cheer moves. And the highlight of the day was that we had an all-Black panel of cheerleaders ranging from professional cheerleaders all the way down to collegiate cheerleaders. So we're really excited about that.
So as a follow-up to the cheer clinic, we were able to, thanks to Towson Black Alumni Alliance, getting the tickets to go to your premiere to see the movie, The Little Mermaid. So we took some of our Black Mermaid cheer clinic participants, and we had the fortunate experience of meeting the direct descendant of Hans Christian Andersen, who is actually the author of the Little Mermaid. So we're coming together. And we were clashing, and it's this merging of cultures, even at the movie. And she's a second generation immigrant, so that's why she's in America now, so that you know. But and anyway, we hope that when we get finished today, that the book will also give you a way, that our talk will also give you a way of evaluating decisions that have been made in relationship to integration, in relationship to, this clash and immersion of cultures. How well are we doing? How well did we do it then? And how well are we doing it now? And so we want to give you that tool, particularly as we approach the 70th anniversary of the 1955 Supreme Court decision that led to the Brown versus Board of Ed, that led to the desegregation of schools. And along with that, another point before I say another word, I want to give a shout out to my Mimi sorors at Delta Sigma Theta sorority. It was 48 years ago, June 22nd, 1975, that we integrated the campus of Towson State College, Towson University, as a Black female sorority, the first Black Greek sorority on that campus at Towson University. Mimi, I love you. Okay, and so here we are. Integration, we talk about K-12. We talk about integration for higher ed, then we're talking about affirmative action. We talk about integration for adults. We're talking about affirmative action, whether it's in school, whether it's in places, whether it's in movies, it's all integration. Okay.
Yeah. So the next thing is the goal of today, right? The goal of the talk. And, we first thought it was important just to talk about the book mechanics and the development of this book. So, as you can see, we're a piece of a pod, and we took around 9 months looking at this book, every single word. And, I always say my mother brought her smarts, her education background, and her experience as a teacher. And I sprinkled it with my little magic. I feel like I brought my creativity. And when I saw, like I said, the Black girls get so excited about the Little Mermaid, I said the Black Mermaid. And so we merged the two, and I feel like it was a court case for 9 months.
Every word between the two of us, every word was a challenge. Every paragraph was a challenge. It has been a labor of love and a work of purpose. And when we got finished, we realized we had more than a children's book. We have a teaching tool and a resource guide. We came up with activities. We got graphic organizers. We have questions that can be used for discussion prompts, for writing prompts, for homework assignments. We have, across the curriculum, ways that it can be used in math class. It can be used in language arts. It can be shared reading. It can also be used in health. Because a lot of things deals with emotions and feelings. And for elementary kids, that comes under health.
And I thought it was also an important way that people of my mother's generation, their story lives on. Hopefully that they will be the last generation to ever remember America of segregation and integration and the beginning of kind of the diversity and the melting pot. So I just thought it was a very important conversation that should be held as young as possible. And it's a growing and learning.
And this is where the impetus for the book came from, actually. She wanted to document, find a way to document that we are the generation and the last people to experience life in segregated America, and now life in integrated America. And what does that mean? What does it look like? Is hence the book, Topaz's First Integration. So, and we also going to finish up giving you a way to use the book. Okay, so Kendra.
Yes. So I'm going to go over the approach we're using today. So Dr. Jackie G, aka Mama, you created a change rubric today. So as we go into our stories, we want you to think about three main questions. One, were the stakeholders involved in this change? Two, does it build positive self-esteem? And three, does it create a culture of productivity? And so, one, who are stakeholders? Anybody who will be affected by this change. And so anybody that's listening, I see that our participants, if you want to put it in the chat right now, I'll take a look at it. And who do you think would have been affected by this change, this Brown versus Board? Who would be affected? I'm gonna give you a few seconds.
Just to think about it and process. Who do you think?
No, you keep on talking.
Okay. Anyway, so
Okay. So I see everybody loves my talk. So I will do my stakeholders. So I put one, parents, right? Family in general. They're going to be worried about the safety. Is there going to be enough military there? What's going to go on to my child? Two, teachers. As a teacher, you can worry about your job security. The realities are that some people had to change their careers. They weren't, where did all these teachers go? And the third one is students. They're going to new schools, curiosity. Will I know anybody there? So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Positive self-esteem. Look at all these decisions that people have done and say, does it build self-esteem? We're really looking for diversity in views and culture. Lastly, the culture of productivity. We want to make sure your mind is in the constant cycle of maintaining a culture of that, and people being viewed and seen at work, life, or etc.
okay. Next slide. Pathway to change. Slide. During my coursework, working at Drexel University, of course, leadership involves, you have to deal with the issue of change because it's just a way of life. And of course, integration, there's no bigger change than integration. We merge our babies together to get through life, to prepare them for life. These are some of the authors that I encountered and studying. Senji, I actually met him on sustainability on a 3-day workshop in Philadelphia. You can go to the next slide. I just want to point out that there are people out there talking about change. It's major. Okay, there's some more names. I think in the middle there, I want to put up Daniel Pink, Innovative Thinking. I did get a chance to hear him speak when he came to Towson University a couple of years ago. And I even thought today, as I'm studying all of this and learning all about this, I'm still looking and learning from basically mostly white males. And for me, as a Black person, I want to learn about how to do change. As a Black person, I do have to go and search and listen to Black scholars. But this is what I was exposed to as a graduate student. And the whole thing about it in the leadership, it's a balancing act.
Next slide.
Next slide. I want to show that I respect the work and that I know that when you're in a leadership position that you have all these things to think about, all these things that the scholars say you should think about as a leader, coming into the situation. And then from the bottom, you have yourself, all of that things that impact you as a human being that you're bringing in as a leader. So I want to show that I respect the work and that we don't dismiss the efforts of the decision makers that went into how do we do integration. Okay, next slide. So I was watching the Wakanda Forever movie, and I keep going Black Panther 2. And the King Damar made the statement, of course, to the Queen that how is never as important as why. And that was important to me because before I always said, I want to know the how. How do things get done? That's so important. But then I hear this, and it gave me cause for pause. But then it makes sense because the why talks about the motivation. Why do you think they did it this way? Why do you think the decision makers, the stakeholders, decided this was the way to do things? So we look at the next slide and creating a good cultural environment. Like Kendra mentioned earlier about the framework from analyzing the tools. It doesn't matter the organization. Excuse me. The whole central thing is it is an organization where people are productive. Is it a culture of success? It's all about the cultural environment that you create, whether it's for your students, whether it's for your employees, whether it's for your family. Everything is about the cultural environment that you create. So in this case, we're talking about, of course, education, the classroom, and school. So is it a cultural environment taken to all of these different components that you see on the screen? Are there opportunities for future growth, for achievement when you in this environment? Do I feel like I have somewhere for me to go and somewhere for me to achieve, to strive to? Do you see me as a person? Do you see me, as my identity? We talk a lot about this today in other areas. My gifts and talents. So you recognize what I bring to the table, my gift sets, my skill sets. The things are different. How am I prepared when I come into the door? What makes me so unique? My own lived experiences. You can't dismiss my lived experiences from who I am, and my own cultural background, my own heritage. All these things we bring in our own lived experiences. So when you think about the people, all these things you should be thinking about, because we all come to the table with this. And do we foster this and grow these things? Always the external factors, always things outside of our control. We can manage the impact, but there are always things going on in the world around us and our cultural climate, the huge world, the current events, legislative, the political climate, all those things impact us.
Yes, so next slide, please. So once again, we're about to get into some stories. And once again, we're showing you the change rubric. If you have a piece of paper and pen, you can kind of hit plus and minuses of meeting requirements, does not meet requirements, needs improvements. And once again, the 3 questions we really want to keep you thinking of were the stakeholders involved in this change. Does it build positive self-esteem? And does it create a culture of productivity?
Yes.
Next, please.
Because that is really always the ultimate goal.
Yeah, so, in front of you right now, I call it like Integration 2023. We are still going through so many changes in America. And a major goal of this book that I really wanted to do is open up dialogue around the word integration and humanize the experience. Integration went beyond just color. It was a major turning point in creating the melting pot of America that we know as it is now. And right now, next slide, so you can see the second part. Thank you. The questions that we're answering: what is going to be the new social norms or culture of America? What is truly American culture, and is everyone truly represented? The first time I went to Africa, I went to Zimbabwe, and I was shocked when the African ladies looked at me and she said, I just thought all Black African Americans were light-skinned with straight hair. And that's until we learned you got relaxers. And so I'm going, what kind of marketing are we showing if that's what you thought Black American women look like?
So fast forward to, we go back in time. I want to speak a little bit about what's going on with the slides that you do see, and talk more about the benefits of integration. Is it happening today? Banning books, critical race theory, disbanding affirmative action jobs. This is 2023. So, but there are some benefits to integration I'd like to talk about. During the first 4 years at the all-Black school, we had what was called heterogeneous grouping. We were all in the same class. It was one classroom. I went through first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade. It was just one class of each, the same students for those 4 years. When we integrated, then it's like 5 sections. So you had a section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Section 1 was the equivalent of your A section. And I was placed in that section. I'm just talking because now I know what happened. But I was the only Black student in these classes. So after we ride the bus on the same bus like we did the year before, going to a different school. That was different, but everybody in the bus looks the same basically. And then go to my homeroom, and it's integrated. Now I went from all Black to we're just 20% of the student population, so it was a major difference. And but in this classroom, it's still integrated. And then we start going into our subject, into our content areas, and that's when things changed. And as a result, however, the long run of being put in a higher level class, I was exposed to a lot more content. We moved at a much faster pace than the other students did. The academics were advanced beyond my grade level, so much so that my 12th grade class, my English class, I took the same notes, used them for my freshman class at Towson, never hardly went to class, used those notes, thank you, Dr. Dave Johnson, and got a B. So I was a year ahead. And because I was in a class with the future leaders of my county, with the business owners, political leaders of the town and the community leaders, then they got the best education in my county. And I was in the class with these students. And so they were dedicated to making sure that they developed their higher level thinking skills. And I was a part of that. I was exposed to that. Another main thing for me as a person coming from a little small village was I was now exposed to mainstream culture. And of course, back then, this was the culture of success. If you want to do anything in life, this is a culture that you look at. This is a culture you try to fit in. This is where you belong. And this is how you define success. You get a job in that culture and you move forward. That's kind of the way that it was. So, but I'm exposed to that in a very personal and close way, and making friendships in classrooms with them. And through the textbooks, even the books in the classroom that we were, it was all about mainstream culture. The library books, all about mainstream culture. So I was exposed to this. The benefit was that I got to understand the nuances and the slang and the different things that made this culture tick. So that was a benefit. Of course, some of the negatives, you know, you're not exposed to as many people with different backgrounds. You know, because I'm an A student in math doesn't mean I'm an A student, you know, in science, for example. I may be an A student, I may be the great athlete, you know, so what? Okay, I'm great, whatever, but I may not be that good in science. So there's a lack of exposure to diversity of learning styles, the lack of exposure to achievement ability, and just the gifts and talents when you don't have that movement along those lines. 25 years later, I want to jump in, 25 years later, I go back to the same schools. My daughter, Kendra, went to all the same schools I attended. I'm about to get back there in a minute. I'm about to shut up here in a minute. And so I go back, I call the school, make an appointment to meet with the school principal. Now, behind the scenes.
So, yes, I was wondering why I was getting taken out of my classes and kind of during my recess. So, you know, that always makes you mad as a kid. And they were making me take these tests. And I was so sick of taking these tests. And I never told my mother. It was just that all of a sudden I knew I took these tests. And then the next week I was in another class. So once again, you know, new students, new curriculum. And I had no idea why this had happened.
So I called the school. So I'm coming into the school to meet with the principal. Now, keep in mind, the school principal is also my 6th grade math teacher. I'm sorry, science teacher. And I had a very troubling experience with him. So while we were sitting there talking, he was sharing part of his day. I mean, he's happy to see me because now I'm involved and I'm grown and I'm involved in the community. And, you know, I have a little voice in the community. He's happy to see me. So, you know, we're engaged at that level as a former student and teacher and his principal. He's sharing how he just had to discipline, he's, you know, had to paddle a student. And I'm sitting here thinking that this is the same man that when I was a child, what he did to me. You remember, I'm the only Black student in my class. So it's just the white teacher and all the white students. And I'll never forget the day he in science, and he asked a question. If something is not a neutron, something's not a proton, or an electron, then what is it? And I always took good notes. And I remember that because the night before I studied my notes, so I knew the answer. So I raised my hand like I would do, and I'm in space here. I raised my hand like I would normally do, waiting to be called on. And do you know, he refused to call on me. My hand stayed up. I won't put it back down. He went on trying to ask the students, you know, don't y'all remember we discovered it yesterday in class, over and over again, and, you know, trying to get the answer out of them. If it's not an electron or a proton, then what is it? And I knew the answer. And I think now that was my first silent protest. I couldn't call it out. Students today that I had in Baltimore City, they would have been called it out. But I wouldn't dare call it out because then I would have been sent to the office possibly for disrupting class. Then I had to deal with my parents later on about why I was sent to the principal's office. That wasn't happening. But I didn't put my hand down until finally I forced him to give the answer. But I remember just thinking there as a child, you know, just wondering, just pain. Like, why would he call me? He sees me here. He sees my hand raised. He doesn't know to this day how much pain he caused. The benefit in looking back, I just realized even today, was that one of the first times I realized that white people are not smarter. I knew the answer, but you would not acknowledge that. You ignored me. Anyway, so I had to deal with this principal that had done this to me in that environment and was now the administrator over my own daughter. I became involved with the PTA at the school, and I did a lot of things in education.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
So you get to see Topaz on her first day in the library. So, when you get the book, I know everybody's going to get the book. There's no books at all about mer people. So once again, we are coming back to our change rubric. Think about it. Were the stakeholders involved in this change? I am pretty sure Topaz did not say, yes, I want to only learn about one culture and not mine. Does it build positive self-esteem? When you go places and you don't see yourself, what does it do to someone's self-esteem? And 3, does it create the culture of productivity? I always want everybody to kind of think about what, when you in high school or any kind of thing, what is a classic? What is a classic book? Before I would have said Shakespeare, Romeo, Juliet, Taming of the Shrew.
That's what we were taught.
That was what I was taught. And
it was counting.
Yes. And when I was in high school, my mother had a conversation with my English teacher. She was my English teacher for 3 years. The book that touched me that I consider a classic is Richard Wright's Black Boy. Yes, hold on. I'm sorry. I talk with my hands. So Richard Wright's Black Boy. And I consider that my classic. So just to keep it in the back of your mind, how people come from different experiences and cultures and how they should all be seen.
One of the things, of course, going to the classroom, I mentioned before that there were no books in the library. The books were all about, they're not about my culture. But the benefit, again, of being forced to learn about the mainstream culture is I understood the nuances and also knew how to code switch. We know what code switching is. We act one way with our friends, let's say, for an example. We act another way with our parents. We talk differently. The same way, when I'm with my, and it's to be code switching also between cultures. That happens. So I had to learn also how to survive in this dominant culture of mainstream society. The not having the books in the library not only is a detriment to me because I don't see myself, you don't see me, but it's also a detriment to the other students because there's a lack of exposure to them to other cultures as well. And the education, the point of education is to prepare people to be global citizens of the world. So you also denying even the mer people the opportunity to learn about these other cultures and become, educated and knowledgeable about these other cultures.
So we're back to Wakanda.
No, we're not.
Show them who you are.
No.
Oh, sorry.
We're not back to Wakanda yet. We were getting there. But over the time, one of the things that I'm going to talk about textbooks is I did have an opportunity as a community member to serve on the textbook selection committee one year it was being updated in Wacomico County. And I'll never forget that one of the guys, one of the other parents on the committee wanted to censor any books related to the Nazis. He said he don't think children should be exposed to all that information. And I said, no, of course I disagreed. And then he wanted to say, well, do you want books on slavery in the library? Well, yes, because it's telling the truth. It's history. We can't not expose kids to history and to truths. So, but I was there then. That was in the 80s. I was having this conversation, and of course it's still going on now with the headlines of censoring what schools do have in their libraries. Another thing that was kind of talking about books again, and I was approached, and one of the parents was concerned about the textbook that had been selected for the math curriculum in Wacomico County. And she knew something was just not right with it. And she asked me to look over all the data. Well, she had a whole package of information, gave me a lot of stuff. I did the research, I figured it out. And and with that information, I did a presentation before the Wacomico County Board of Education that basically showed how they selected a book that they had voted on that was best for Black boys and other minority students, took that book, voted to use it with the top level students, took the book that they said did not work as well in math, and took that book and recommended it for use with all of the other students. But the book that worked well, especially with Black boys, they gave to the top level students. And I was able to show that. And of course, from that, it led to the creation of the Minority Achievement Committee in Wacomico County. So it's just amazing to know that even with right before you still made this decision that was not best for the Black students in this situation. Okay, so finally we're to Wakanda forever.
Yes. Show him who you are. Show them who you are. Excuse me.
So, if you watch the movie, you know that this is when the scene when the new Black Panther is in the position to annihilate one way or the other King Namor, and Namor had was responsible for the death of the Queen, Angela Bassett's character that you see on screen. And while she's debating what to do, standing over him, the mother comes to her, the Queen comes to her, and just show him who you are, show them who you are. So next slide, please. So I want to take that and as an example of how we make choices in life.
So once again, another excerpt from the book, excuse me. And here you see Topaz in gym class with Mr. Riggs.
Mr. Ritter.
Well, yours is Mr. Ritter. In this book, Mr. Riggs.
In real life. All right, so I want to talk about my physical ed teacher because he became an important person in my life. And I was a country girl, tomboy. I was raised with 5 boys, plenty of first cousins running around a little small community, populated by my own cousins and relatives, and I was a tomboy and very good in sports. And I always gotten A's in gym. And all of a sudden I'm in this new school and I'm getting C's in gym class. And that was very troubling to me. So the teacher did not see me as a leader, never saw me as a leader. But as time went on, that bothered me. And then I thought about what my mother had said and some of my training, which is, you go out there and you prove yourself, which is what I did. I could have easily, however, just shut down. But I decided, no, I know what I'm good at. And I'm going to push forward with this. And he began to notice me because of that. And because also, let me be honest, I was a little fast runner, a little short legs, a little 5, 2.5 legs, and I set school records. And that's what made him notice me. I set school records, and they may still be set today, 1 or 2 of them. And from then on, eventually my C's changed to A's, and they remained there for the rest of the time. And so it became a positive relationship. And I was determined to change my grade, and I put forth that effort, but things could have easily gone another way.
So fast forward, and my elementary school gym teacher was also Mr. Ritter. Now 25 years later. So she got him in his 20s, and I got him 25 years later. And for my entire elementary school career, I was called Jackie. And, it got so bad that even everyone in class would be like, Kendra. Now, I will say that proves my mother's point of her being an excellent athlete, because I was the exact opposite. And, I'm happy to report that I did maintain A's in gym. However, I think mine was more an A for effort and not my ability. But I always loved Mr. Ritter. He was always fair to everybody. I think everyone had a chance to be a team captain. I was a team captain. I had no business being a team captain. But I appreciate that he always made me feel safe, and I never felt really different in class. And I remember one time we were doing a jump for America, and you jump rope for like cardiovascular health. And I was fundraising, and quite frankly, I was sick of fundraising. So I think I was $5 off from getting this $50 T-shirt for the weekend. And he pulled me to the side and he said, you know, I added $5 to your fundraising so you can have this T-shirt. So, you know, I always say thank you to Mr. Ritter.
Yeah, we over the years, you know, we are friends today, and I was very involved in the life of the community work, and I ran for office a couple of times. His wife was the executive director of the Board of Elections in Wacomico County, so I have interactions with her, and through the PTA, we even had a chance to dine together at a banquet, and so things evolved. But and then after that first year of integration, I joined a summer softball league team, and I was the second Black to join that team. Lauren Darman, my cousins and neighbors, was the first one, and our coach was a white guy. I'm sorry, that used to come through the community collecting our dry cleaning, and that's how we met. So I joined the team, and but the difference was that now I'm joining the team with my classmates. They were not strangers to me, and I went on to play softball from the 5th grade all the way through till I graduated from high school and became quite good at it. I'm gonna brag a bit. I was a champion when it came to softball. Okay, but and it was a great self-esteem building tool for me. Okay, and I think now.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
So once again, here we are. You have heard all of our stories, right? We're going back to our change rubric. What do you think about our stakeholders now, right? Are we needing improvement anywhere? Are we meeting some of our requirements? Are we building positive self-esteem for everybody? And once again, the culture of productivity. So hopefully, once again, just really think about that in any instance in life. I think it's just very important to know that change is always moving. It's always
it is. That's life.
Yes,
that's life, and it's all about how do we manage that. And okay, that's the next slide. And we're going to start to wrap this up. I think we're pretty much in our segment here. Looking at the Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is used to compare and contrast any two things, and it is compare and contrast is one of the most powerful way to teach something. So Venn diagrams are very powerful tools. You can use this at different grade levels and at different academic abilities as well. For example, if I was using an elementary school, I might be giving an example of each. For example, I look at the mermaid side and I would say, well, what is it that only mermaids have? And I might give one example. They have a tail, a fin. They don't have legs. On the other side, land students, the younger students are probably going with more physical attributes. And so you would expect that and the more physical thing. And then you send them back to their seats or your whole discussion and come up with maybe two or three other examples of how mermaids and land students are lacking different. In the middle is how they are the same. And if you were dealing maybe with a higher level, maybe you want to deal with the psychological impact of, how do you think they felt when you go to the library, for example, you don't see any books there about yourself. How do you think that would make you feel? Or how did that make the mermaids feel when they went in there and didn't see any books about themselves? How did land students feel? Compare and contrast those experiences. So you can kind of go up and down the academic and grade level scale and using this Venn diagram for that. We also can see some sample prompts. We included several pages of questions and activities and project-based learning ideas. And here's just a few of them. For example, think about the experience when I was holding my hand up for so long with my science teacher. And he not calling on me, and I was nervous giving my hand up, okay, because he's looking at me at the corner of his eye, and not making contact, going around the room, deliberately ignoring me. but I kept my hand up. So maybe I would say after we talked about that in class, and I would say,
really wanted to make sure this book is comprehensive.
that's
It's a
comprehensive.
textbook. You know, I told my mother, you know, during COVID, I said, these parents, homeschoolers, first year teachers, give them something that everybody can use. And so it started as a book. And then all of a sudden my mother added her flavor with the activity sheets and the questions.
Featuring me.
Yes, there was a coloring book in it, right? So, you know, we really want to make sure that everybody has something. And if they don't know what to say, then you can find it in the book.
So there, and then you may want to, and I say project-based learning is a way for kids to express themselves in projects, whether you ask them to do it in a song, whether you ask them to do it in, they can write a book, a play, whether they can do a drawing, a comic strip. It doesn't matter how they express themselves. As long as you develop your own rubric, of course, for grading or for evaluating, and then you keep, and then you use these prompts. You can use also for homework. So it's a lot in the book. It's just more than a children's book. Okay, so in conclusion, we've asked you, now that you've applied the change rubric, just maybe take a moment and just think about how many pluses you may have had in your mind mentally of things that you think that they did right in terms of involvement of the stakeholders, and in terms of, does it foster self-esteem, build self-esteem, and does it create that culture of productivity? How many pluses did you get? That they did a great job? Did you get some minuses that it was not a good job? And then maybe some zeros, and it just needs some improvement. And I think if I were doing that, I would have a little bit of all of those things.
Yes, I think, like, once again, some things were positive, some things were negative, and we're still growing, right? Change is constant.
Okay, so we're going to, I don't know if within our time frame,
Yes, we're looking at throwing it back to the next slide because it just shows the QR codes for the book. If you're interested, for the purchase of the Black Mermaid, Topaz's first integration, and then you can listen to Flow Those ABCs by the Black Mermaid. So we're so excited. Thank you.
Okay, so Brian, I guess we will turn it back over to you now. And if you've read the book, we're trying to encourage people to read the book. And if you want to comment and make any recommendations for how we can better use the change rubric or use the book, we appreciate your feedback. We're talking, it's a conversation starter also. And if you don't talk, we don't make progress. So. When I looked into, thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. We are really in very critical times. As I said, affirmative action is just integration for adults. So we're talking about how to do that even in 2023. And so before the Supreme Court, the case now is the gentleman only wants to one change on college applications. He wants to take off race. None of the other categories, just race. That's the problem I have with it. Take all categories off: gender, marital status, religion, whether or not you're the child of an alumni, whether or not your parent works there, because those are the people get in usually easier. The alumni, children of alumni and children of employees get in easier than anybody else, I've been told. So I understand. So take off all the categories, not just race, not just race. So, but that's what he's arguing for. Take only race off of college admissions applications. And I hope the Supreme Court, we'll see what happens, because that would be my next fight. Take them off and just go strictly on academics, on curriculum, on your essence, whatever it is. Take all those particulars off.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. I think at first I would have said no. This will never be overruled. This will never be overturned. And then now women are sitting up here fighting against the Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, 50 years ago, same thing.
And so you sit here and you go, well, what's happening to the fabric of America? once again, positives, these are conversations that need to be held, right? Can we come to the table and find some middle ground, or what was going to be a negative?
Well,
How
yes.
can America, everyone's American, everybody, and if we don't celebrate our diversity, I think that will be our downfall.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace it. All cultures. All of us, we're here to stay. And as a matter of fact, we are the original people. So we were here when most people got here in America for us. We were already here when you got here. So we got displaced. Our ancestors as Native Americans.
Good question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, I think it is under attack, and we need to all be paying close attention to it and remembering that affirmative action is just integration for adults. That's all that it is.
Well, I was just thinking, mine's not like integration, but I remember my brother jumping in the car from pre-K, and he said, "Mom, am I Black?" And so my mom turned around. She said, "Yes, very much so." And I thought it was funny because I had a similar experience. And, I remember going to school and people were saying, well, she's white and you're Black. And I was like, well, wait, I'm Black. And that was, I knew what I was, but it was in a negative connotation. So all of a sudden it was like, you Black people. And it was just never seen in that light. So I thought it was interesting that when we kind of did my brother and I did our integration of going into a new culture, how everybody made sure we knew who we were, even though it was something we never thought about.
See, I've always been pro-Black, so my kids have always taught them that they're Black, and none of this mix. You're a Black American, and that has a unique history all by itself. So the key point, however, is that they never associated being a Black person with anything negative. I remember distinctively both of my children about the same age, between 9 and 11, come asking me that. Kids are coming out of a dance class one day where she'd been going since the age of 4 and coming out, "Am I Black?" Well, yeah, same thing with my son, he asked one day, because it wasn't anything negative. But then when they heard it in a negative way, they had to ask me, well, do I belong to that group of people? And this is from integration, mixing with other cultures, I forgot what the question was, but.
No, any other encounters? I shared one. I didn't know if you wanted to share.
One of the two things, I'm going to share one that stays in my mind to this day, was the first time I recognized that there was a difference in the income levels of white people. We've not been in their world before, other than we didn't do anything with white people, basically, for the most part. And I remember walking to the school. The bus dropped us off and we going into the school building. I remember turning around, I heard a car come up, and I remember that the student got this car. This car is a little fancy red sports car, and the whole thing, her whole persona, his persona, I knew right away that these were people that were different from the people that had gotten off the buses that had walked to school that day. I couldn't verbalize it and didn't know what it was, but over years I now know what it was about. I saw a higher income. I saw classes, and the difference in classes among white people. That was new. That was new to me. The second thing I don't want to dwell too much on was it occurred in homeroom class, and there were some of my students and my fellow classmates from the Cedar Lane, the all-Black school, and I never forget that one of the male students who stretched his leg out, and the home teacher was walking by him at the same time, and she did a little trip. She didn't fall, but she just did a little stumble and caught herself, and she felt that he had done that deliberately. And I saw it happen. I knew that he had not done it deliberately, but as a student, as a child, what am I going to say? And she sent him to the office, and that was the beginning of that low tolerance for Black boys that I witnessed in my first day of school. And eventually, that student, as a matter of fact, did not graduate from high school eventually.
Yeah, and I would like to share one more quick story, because I think it's important to really allow people to understand what integration and did for me, especially like in dance class, that you're alone so much. So one time I was in dance class with these girls from about like 14 years, and they did not tell me they were going to New York
To take up a special class.
take up a special class. And you know, I showed up at the dance studio, and it was only me and the Russian ballet teacher that was there at that time. And they didn't even tell the teacher. Like, they made sure that kind of we came, and they didn't want to tell it to the teacher so I wouldn't find out. And my teacher looked at me and she said, well, you're here, I'm here, we're still going to do this class. So, you know, I did the class, and this was the first time that I felt my Russian dance teacher really saw me. And she said, oh, you're a beautiful dancer. You're giving me goosebumps. Now, this has been my ballet teacher for the past 3 years. I've always been getting very minor dance roles. And after just that interaction, I got better roles. She even had to stand up against some of the parents that were complaining, saying this is not fair that Kendra is getting these roles. And so I just think that shows the importance of, you know, when you really see another person, the beauty that can come out of it.
And I know that some of our listeners in our audience, and thank you so much for tuning in. They were so happy that you're over. Thank you so much. May not have had, when we say integration, your experience is maybe totally different. And then it's integration, really nothing happened. You went to school, your classmates looked the same, everybody looked the same. And I know that can happen because being a teacher in Baltimore City was a different experience for me to see, you know, that almost all my students were Black Americans. You know, a couple of years I might have had a couple of Hispanic students in my class, but for the most part, almost all the students were African American. I have your balance toward white teachers, then Black teachers in Baltimore City Public Schools, and the same thing with the administrators. So, so your experience integration, you may not even move that far. Conversely, if you're out in maybe in the mountain area somewhere in Iowa or in Montana, maybe it had no impact on you. No. Because you didn't have any Black people, any Asians, you didn't have anybody of color in your community anyway. So the law changed, didn't mean anything. But for some of us, you know, we got to experience it from childhood days, and it also helps to better prepare you for life. Like I said, integration is in how it works. You know, we got to integrate in life throughout society. So. Yeah.
Of course, this is just the beginning, darling. So, you know,
yes,
you know, it's like, well, you know, a two-person team. So, you know, they are really already in the works. You know, what I did want to focus on, and Mother doesn't know this yet, but my mother already has a play, and I really want her to show her other textbook, which she did on our trip together to Kenya.
The textbook.
Yes. So
teach kids how to think.
So, you know, as we're, you know, dropping this one, we are always in a development. You know, I do already have 3 more songs that I'm trying to remember so I can go out and record them, like a counting song and a good morning song. And I always kind of say mine is, you know, the hood of the education, because it's, I just love the 808s and trap beats, and I'm just hoping that will make another kid want to learn.
Yes, we are looking at doing the Black Mermaid, doing a series of books, and see it as a way to find a way for children, particularly, to talk about very difficult issues, while also dealing in the realm of fantasy and making it fun and enjoyable.
Afrofuturism.
Afrofuturism. Okay, yes. I assume you mean that, and I'm going to stick in the context of being 20% to 20% of the population versus the other, you know, well, I don't know how else you do anything without us. I don't know how else to say that without.
Because everybody's important.
Everybody's important. And America needs everybody on full steam ahead. Considering the state of the world and where we are as a nation, we need everybody. We need. All America needs to be productive.
Stakeholders is just not in school; it's in work. It's with your family. You can be a stakeholder with a lot of things. It really depends on just the integration. Once again, as my mother said, and where you lived, how it affected you. I think everybody gets affected by the rules of America, even if you don't think it affects you. You know, just with the economy and in our society, it's going to somehow get back to you. When I'm not sure, I wish I could understand the context a little bit more.
But then you got to be at the table. I want my 20% represented. Okay? Simple as that. So we talk about late 1960s. So right at this point, I'm in high school. And
I want you to also point out that your brothers, because it was very different for my mother going to 4th, 5th grade versus your older brothers that were going to high school.
And they all, and we've never talked about it, which I think we need to talk about it, because I look at their report cards. One of the subject areas that they consistently got low grades in was history. And I often thought about that and come to the conclusions because they just didn't see themselves in the history books. And so they rebelled against that. You didn't see yourself. So they always got very, very, very low grades in history.
And one or two failed, right?
I had my
family
business. My brother's born here to see. He don't know this, but it was such a traumatic experience, the integration of it, that he couldn't move for 2 years. My mother said he just sat there and did nothing for 2 years, academically, just did nothing for 2 years. Well, for a year and a half, and finally he kicked into motion. But it was a different experience for my brothers as black males.
Yeah, and can you talk about the curiosity on your side and the other students' side?
Well, when the affirmative, yes, thank you for that. It is major. Because it was new in the 60s, we were all curious. So there was an innocence about it. We were just, as children, just naturally curious about one another. The adults, of course, were fearful. These laws are passed, these laws in place. Somebody wants to break the law. And so, and I can truly say that there are relationships that were formed from those days that exist today because they were real. And we saw each other as children and as people. Now, the difference now, of course, is once society realized that the laws don't have as much teeth in them, and the fear disappeared about breaking the law when it comes to civil rights, things have changed. So we don't have that same level of innocence and curiosity about one another. If anything, given our current climate, we already have walls up. It's just not a good look for America. It really isn't. So, but back then we were just curious. We were just curious about one another. In terms of society as a whole, what was also going on, because we were part of the baby boomers coming out off of World War II, and we were coming along. You got, in the World War II, now we in the 70s, the 60s, you got the Vietnam War, you got the sexual revolution, you got the drug culture. You have all these things taking place in the 60s and the 70s, and we were growing up. And then you got integration in the midst of all of this. Now we take all this stuff and y'all got to live together and figure it all out. Okay. on top of that, but it was different. And I think it's a little bit older today, a lot more distant. Maybe we've lost some of that curiosity about each other as human beings, and keeping an open door as we look into one another as people, just as human beings on this planet.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank our incredible presenters today, Dr. Jaky Banks and Kendra Banks, for this awesome book talk.